We're very excited. We're joined by Aislinn Konig. Aislinn, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Very cool. So, let's go back to the very beginning. When you got started with basketball, was it basketball first? Was it other sports? What did you get going with, and kind of where were you when that was happening? And kind of give us the beginning story.
Well, actually, I played soccer first, and I like to think I was pretty good, but I'm pretty sure I was just like taller and had longer legs than everyone, so I just like boot it as far as I could and like outrun everyone. So when skills started to get involved, I very quickly became uninterested and kind of transitioned into my family's sport of basketball. Everyone in my family played. Basically, my grandfather still plays, so it was kind of just like a natural transition into that sport, and I haven't gone back since. And I think my parents are pretty happy because they don't have to sit out in the rain anymore.
Yeah, no kidding. I think that's one of the first things parents are trying to do is sabotage soccer, especially in British Columbia. So you got involved with basketball at a young age. Do you remember how old you were?
12 was when I started like actually playing seriously.
Okay, and then so what's that like? Your dad got you going. Your mom got you going. You come from a basketball family. Both people are, certifiably basketball crazies, right? Like they're in the basketball crazy people category, which helps obviously. So what was the first step, and kind of what was that like?
So originally, I had just started playing basketball because it was what my family did, and that was a natural next sport. And I remember in my first game, like because I'd been watching it for so long, I was pretty good. But there's like this really funny story of I'm 12 years old, I have front bangs, and I'm wearing like Converse Weapons were my very first basketball shoe, the Larry Bird edition, so they're black, white, and green. And I'm going there, and the girl's out of bounds, and my mom had told me, she's like, when somebody just holds the ball in front of you, take it. And so we're at this little Steve Nash league, and this girl's out of bounds looking for a pass, and she held it out like this. And I was like, well, I was told if it was sitting in front to take it. So I took it, and then it was underneath the basket, so I did a layup. And the ref was so confused as to what just happened. He didn't say anything. We got the points. But I didn't really, it didn't really get serious until the end of that year when I was fairly good, not as good as a 12-year-old really can be. And my dad sat me down. He was like, listen, we're not going to pay for your college. It's just not, we just don't want to. So like, you have a choice. Either you're going to be really, really good in school and you're going to get a scholarship, or you're going to work really hard and save up money and pay for it yourself the same way we did, or you're going to be really good at basketball. And seeming as though I didn't really like school all that much. Like I enjoyed school, but didn't really like it. And nobody wants a job.
No.
I went with the obvious answer, and that was to play basketball and go for a scholarship.
You know what the funny thing is?
That was kind of how I started.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's just kind of how I started to take it seriously.
No, I love that. And it's funny because it takes a certain level of self-awareness to do that, because a lot of kids get jobs when they're in high school for no reason. It's like, it's a cool thing to do. And it's like, well, a basketball scholarship for, you specifically was, hundreds of thousands of dollars, whereas there's no job you could have gotten in high school that would have paid you, 10% of that. So it doesn't really, I don't understand the math that people are doing in their heads, but that's a different story for another time. So you are 12, your dad tells you essentially you're on your own, figure it out. Now you've decided, okay, I guess I better start taking this seriously, but you also got to love it a little bit. Talk about kind of growing your love for the game and what that's like.
Well, it's funny you say I was on my own, and like in my head as a 12-year-old, I'm like, yeah, I am on my own. I'm going to do this all by myself. But like my parents dropped like $50,000 on my basketball. So, I mean, it's that craziness and really benefited me. I mean, I wasn't really on my, as much as my younger self would like to say I did it all by myself. They definitely were the driving force behind that. But I had always loved basketball, just being around it, watching it. My dad coached at UFV, and my family had just been playing forever. My uncle played at UFU while my dad coached. So just being around it, I really loved the game from the very beginning. Like some of my very first memories are of me being in the gym with my family. So the love was already there. Now the skill was something that we really had to work on. I mean, I remember being in gyms and for an hour straight, I was only allowed to do left-hand layups. You're just going to continue to do left-hand layups until you get 10 in a row and you don't miss. And, now that seems pretty silly because, I'm more developed, I'm a better player, but back then it took me an hour. So, it was a long process of developing the game. And I think the love that I had already had established before from being around it really helped me buy into that.
Yeah, it's funny. Bruce Langford always tells stories about Kim Smith, just exactly what you just said. Like, okay, she couldn't do it behind the back, so she literally did it for 2 days. And then it was like, she could do it now. And so she would just find another thing. And so, it takes a rare breed to actually have that focus to do it for an hour. Like as a coach, I'm trying to keep kids motivated for like 7 minutes. If I can get 7 minutes, we're going to be okay. So having an hour is pretty good. So anyway, where'd you grow up? Were you in Vancouver the whole time, or did you come to Vancouver later on?
So my family had traveled a lot. I was born in Vancouver. I then lived in like the Lower Mainland for a while, then lived in Prince George up north for a while, and then came back to the Lower Mainland, spent a year in the United States. My dad's work put him there, and then came back and ended up at Brookswood. So it was a little bit of everywhere, but the majority of my life has been spent like in the Lower Mainland.
I saw with Neil Brown the other day about when you guys ended up at Brookswood, but I remember coaching you against you. Sorry, not coaching you. I was coaching against you when you were at Charles Best. And I remember we had a pretty good junior team, and you were playing juniors at grade 8. And we ended up having to double team you the entire second half of the game because we were going to lose. And so it's funny that you looking back, you're like, oh, I was no good. But it's like, well, we don't double many grade 8s at junior level. So you weren't that bad. So anyway, one of the things that you guys have always taken very seriously is your off-season training. So we'll get to Brookswood in a second, but you started going off-season, traveling, trips, all that stuff just before you got to Brookswood, correct? What was that like, the first experience playing against really tough competition?
Because like you said, my parents are super dedicated. I was really lucky that when they saw that there wasn't a team that was playing the type of caliber games that they wanted me to play to develop, they decided to go, well, hell with it. Like, we're just going to build a team. And so my entire life, like, they built teams and we went and we played. And the very first year was kind of crazy. So we had all these girls who had never like played in the US before. A lot of those girls who actually were on the Charles Best team with me, like Jay Rampuri, Rachel, and all of those girls. They were there, and Anna Evans. They were all there with me. And we were going across, and I remember this so vividly. We had like those mesh reversibles, like the type that you use for practice, and that was our game jerseys. And we walked into these gyms, and people like had like these brand new like single-sided like Adidas and Nike jerseys, and we were looking around like, we're gonna get smacked. like these girls all have like brand new Nikes on and all of this stuff, and fortunately the type of development we had put on in before going into those tournaments was good enough that we actually were winning quite a few games. And it was really funny because all the teams used to talk about us. They're like, those are the scrubs, but they're good. So like I have like friends that knew me back then from playing against us in those tournaments who I've met back again in college who are like, you guys looked so bad. You had front bangs and like braces, and like you guys were just like such scrubs, and you beat us by like 20. And it's just really funny because I think that experience of being able to play is so important to the development of players, because if you're playing the same people all the time and not competing against the people you're going for, especially in the sense of scholarships, how are you getting better? And I think without that, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today.
Absolutely. Well, the thing I love about basketball is that it's it doesn't matter who you are. When you step on the court, you can either play or you can't play. And it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It doesn't matter if you're trying to straighten your teeth or not trying to straighten your teeth. If you can play, you can play. And if you can't, you got to go somewhere else. And so, I think there's something to be said about just, getting in there and having that mentality, that underdog mentality, because, you got to figure it out. So anyway, you end up going to Brookswood in grade 9. Obviously, they have a very good program for a long period of time. They've had a lot of dedicated people that have worked at it for years, national team players, junior national team players, all that sort of stuff. And, as a grade 9, what's it like getting to Brookswood and seeing a culture where people are actually in the gym already? You're not the one trying to get people to go to the gym, but they're already there.
Well, actually, I went there in grade 10. I played a year of high school basketball in the States. So
I forgot that.
Yeah, no, it's people forget that. Like, half of my friends don't know that I went to the States, and the other half think I'm American. So, it's the reason I ended up going to Brookswood was really because of that factor. There was a lot of options for where I could go, and it really came down to the fact that the gym was open all the time. Coach Brown, huge part of my development, huge part of my success, simply because he was willing to be there every morning at 6 a.m. and open the gym and to be there late. And, it brought me, I would be at school from 7 a.m. for early workouts all the way down to 9 p.m. after practice, because I would work volleyball games and stuff in between. And he would come and bring all of the girls snacks and lunches and stuff, basically to make sure that we were fueled. And just his love and dedication for the game and to his players was really why I ended up choosing there. So being able to be in that situation where everybody wanted to be in the gym was super exciting, and I think that's why we were able to do what we did in those 3 years.
Yeah, so obviously 3 provincial championships. Talk about what it was like winning the first one, because I would imagine that probably holds a special place in your heart.
Yeah, I think so that provincial championship, we played Oak Bay, I believe, in the final, and we had played them as our very first game in the beginning of the season, and we had lost. And I had a calf cramp, and I was on the side, rolling out that game. And I remember feeling really disappointed because we had prepared, we had been working and there was a lot of energy around me being there. So we had lost that game. And then we come back into the final, and we're playing them again. It's on the same floor. It's like a rematch. And, it was just a really special moment being able to do what we had set out to do in the beginning. It was kind of a manifestation from the beginning of, we're going to win another provincial championship. This is what we're going to do. And being able to be a part of that team who I walked on and they accepted me immediately. There's a lot of senior players on that team with Jesse Brown, and that whole group was really special because automatically they accepted me and it became a family and home-like. So just being able to start that legacy in such a good spot with such amazing people was really special to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you continue your high school career, you end up winning a couple more. You got a whole bunch of kids that go to play university. The train keeps going. Talk about what it's like to start thinking about where you want to go to university and how you end up at North Carolina State. Because, I'm probably one of the few people in British Columbia that's actually been in North Carolina State. I went for a football game. It's a really cool spot. I mean, I really enjoyed it going out there, but it's not a natural fit for somebody from Langley to end up in North Carolina State. So kind of what was your thought process on what you were looking for and how you ended up figuring out that was the right spot for you?
So, as a kid from BC, getting recruited by a bunch of big schools is mind-blowing. And getting recruited by over 40 of them is unimaginable. I mean, I remember my very first turn down was Gonzaga. They were my first call where I talked to the coach and I told them no. And, as a Canadian, Gonzaga is the pinnacle, all of the great BC kids end up going there. And I remember I was on the phone, I'm like, am I doing this right? Crying on the phone because I felt so distraught that I was turning down this, because this is something people dream about, Gonzaga calling, and I only had 2 calls with them, and I was like, this isn't the place for me. And afterwards, I think I was alone, my family wasn't around, and I just cried. but it got easier after then. But as far as
hold on a second. I want to cut in there for a sec. I think overcoming some fear and some obstacles is what makes you stronger, right? So that first one was scary, and then obviously it got a lot easier. So that's part of the process. I think people need to understand that it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be a little challenging, and it's also complimentary that you have so many people that want you. So you kind of got to take it all in strides. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, I think understanding where you're supposed to fit and everything, and also valuing those offers, even though they're not the place you want to go or are going to end up. I think lots of people get caught up in, I'm too good for this, I'm too good for that. But for me, a big part of it was just feeling, honored every single time somebody was doing that. I think that played a big part in my choices further down the line. And then, so as far as getting to NC State, I had narrowed my list down, and I had only taken 2 officials, and one was to Stanford, which was one of my dream schools ever since I was little.
It's my dream. And that's my dream school, by the way. Sorry.
I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, different story.
Yeah, beautiful, great weather. I took my official there, and it was amazing. I mean, blown away. Everything seemed perfect. I mean, you go there and it's just everybody's on bikes and the weather's beautiful and the campus is huge and the buildings are gorgeous and stuff. And I was sitting in my hotel room with my mom, and I had never ordered room service before. And the coaches said, don't feel free to order room service. So we ordered like a bunch and it delivered, and my mom was like over at the thing, and she was like, look, like the chocolate cake is here and all this stuff, and she's looking, and then she turned, and I hadn't come up to the tray yet, and she turned around and looked at me, and I was crying. And I know I sound like I cry a lot, but I really don't. I was crying, and she goes, what's wrong? Like, what? And I was like, Mom, we made it. We're here. And like, I'm getting like a little bit teary-eyed thinking about it again, because it's something that we had worked towards for so long, and this was my dream school. And, we had a really good moment, and then we went and ate the chocolate cake. But I left there thinking, there's no way NC State's going to beat this. And the funny thing is, when NC State first sent me a letter, I had no idea who NC State was. I mean, we don't get their coverage in BC. So I heard NC State, and I know of UNC, and I knew of Wake Forest and Duke, because, obviously the men's side of that game is projected everywhere. But I didn't know NC State. And when I first saw NC State, I actually was like, who? Are they Division II? Like, I was confused. And my dad was like, no, they're actually really good. And I was like, oh, wow. And it's funny that it progressed from that to them eventually being the place I chose. And I went on that official, and I only spent, to the disappointment of Coach Moore, I only spent like 36 hours there as opposed to 48. I had to get back to school, take exams and stuff. But I got on campus, and within hours of being there, I knew this was the place I was supposed to be. The campus is beautiful. The city is beautiful, but the people there are just amazing. And the team and the coaches really made it feel like home. And, I'm an adventurous person, and I like being far away from home. So but I also wanted some of that comfort, and they definitely gave that to me. So I went home, tried to do my due diligence, got a big noteboard, and wrote out my pros and cons. And I was sitting there and I was writing them out, and NC State's pros just kept going and going and going. And my dad comes up behind me and he goes, I don't know why you're wasting your time. You already know where you're supposed to be. And I looked at him, and I looked at my thing, and I crumpled it up. I said, you're right. And so I called Coach Moore right there, and I committed. And, it was the start of one of the most amazing journeys of my entire life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely, like, being from British Columbia, people don't really follow the ACC. It's not like something you're thinking like, oh, what's going on in the ACC right now? We're a Pac-12 area, if we are any area, and we're not really even a Pac-12 area, but you kind of get to understand it. My buddy, I have some friends in North Carolina, so I've been there a few times. It's a great, the Southern hospitality is fantastic. The area is gorgeous. Campus itself is very nice. The football stadium is really cool. The basketball arena is, like, I enjoyed the whole thing when I was there. I got to see a lot of stuff. And then you're also next door to all the other big schools in the area. So it's a really cool spot. So you graduate from high school, you decide North Carolina State. is the place to be for you. You go down there freshman year, serious jump. Talk about the difference between what it was like and then your first year and that first few months, what that experience is like.
So from my high school, I was used to being the person. You know, take all the shots, get all the accolades, do all those things. And I came to NC State and I had 4 very good seniors on the team who were starting ahead of me. And, you know, I desperately wanted to be part of the starting group, but also understood that, like, for the chemistry of the team, for the overall success of the team, I had to take a step back and be the 6th man. And that was something that I, at first, didn't deal with very well. I worked myself into an injury that ended up, you know, pulling my season short. But, you know, I was one of those kids who, like, wanted to work. My thing is be the best player so that coach doesn't have a choice but to play you. Whether or not he likes you, whether or not the teammates like you, if you're the best player every time you step on the floor, he has no choice but to play you. And I got into my head that I just needed to be more fit and I need to do this, I need to do that. And that is the naivety of being young and not understanding taking care of your body. So I used to go to our morning practices, practice, weight lift, do our conditioning with the team, go through class all day, go back to the gym, get shots up, come back, and at night I would jump on the treadmill and run 2 miles as fast as I could. And I ended up stress fracturing my foot. And it's a Jones fracture. It's on the outside of my foot. And I then, another silly 18-year-old decision, decided I was going to play on it. You know, sitting out for a stress fracture would have been 3 weeks probably of healing. And by the time I broke it at Wake Forest and practiced before a game, it was at least a 2-month recovery. So kind of the biggest jump for me, especially in that role as a freshman, was definitely understanding managing my body and taking care of it. Not so much the play. I was already playing against very good kids in the AU circuit and all of that. It was just maturing as a person more so than anything.
Yeah, you know what, and I think there's a little bit of both, right? So a lot of kids go to university and they're too busy with all the other stuff and they don't even spend enough time to get to the spot, and you kind of took it to the other extreme and you went over the board, right? And so listening to your body, which is important, you have to do that, and then also understanding there's steps that you got to take and you can't jump too many steps. You got to kind of just slowly drag it out and figure it out. So you're out for the longest period probably in your career. I mean, you never really had major injuries. So that's a big deal. You start getting better and working out. Did you spend the summer there, your first summer?
Yeah, but I spent the first part of summer. We have 2 summer sessions. The second one is mandatory, but the first one is optional. And we all opt to take classes during that time anyway, so we get money. But for the first session, I was there, and then I went with Team Canada over to Italy.
So what was that like? Was that your first international experience?
No, I had been playing with the Canadian national team since I was 14. I played on the U16 team when I was 14 in the FIBA Americas. Didn't play a whole lot. I was quite young, but that was my first experience. This one was my first Worlds, and we did some scrimmages in France, and then we came to Italy and we played in Italy, and you know, we made history there. We won, first time ever that Canada has medaled at the Junior Worlds, and that was just so amazing experience and a really good way to come back from the injury and start feeling my rhythm again.
So you come in your second year, and I would imagine your expectations for yourself are a lot higher. What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, now I was starting. You know, our team had lost we had lost 4 senior starters, which is, as anybody knows, very difficult because that they're really a steady force in a team. Like, seniors have a big role to play in the direction of the team in their mindset and setting the tone. So we were fairly young. We only had 2 seniors that year, and I was playing 40 minutes a game. So kind of jumping from playing about half the game and then coming from an injury to playing 40 minutes was a huge jump. And another scenario where, I had to this time mature my body more. I had to be stronger, I had to be faster, condition more, but obviously doing so in a way that protected my body.
You talk very glowingly about your coach. Talk about the relationship you have with your coach there and the coaching staff. Was the rest of your coaching staff the same the entire time you were there, or was there a lot of movement?
We had one turnover when I was there. We lost 2 coaches. The people who recruited me, Jean Hill and Nikki West, ended up leaving. Coach Hill took a head coaching job at Georgia State, and Coach Nikki is now at Charlotte. They were kind of the group that recruited me, but the next group that came in was Simon Harrison, Aaron Bath, and throughout the whole, they're all very different people, but throughout the whole time, like the culture that was built around those coaches and the way they cared about their players really spoke through on the way we played on the floor, because we played really hard for our family. And I mean, everybody on that coaching staff from the very beginning through the end had a huge part in the success of the team as a whole.
So you're there when you're experiencing all this. You're obviously going to the ACC tournament. One of the things people don't realize who's in the ACC from where we're from. So you're talking North Carolina, you're talking Duke, you're talking Louisville, you're talking Syracuse. Like, we're talking the most prestigious universities in all of basketball.
Yeah.
What's that like going to these fantastic buildings and these epicenters of basketball, kind of the shrines that we have of the sport, and kind of playing in these places?
The awe never really wears off. I mean, especially as somebody who genuinely loves the game in all of its qualities. You walk into these arenas and every single time you get like that tingly feeling, like I'm really here, like we're doing it. And, I just think that that's something, especially a kid, like coming from BC, you don't really have that experience very often. Obviously we do have sports and they are, we have very good teams, but it's not that same culture. And being able to come into these places where stadiums are packed, like to the rim, with fans screaming for the players, knowing the players by name, just being a part of that is really an amazing experience.
Yeah, no, very cool. And then also fill in the buildings. I mean, playing in front of full buildings for girls basketball players isn't really something that happens very often. So being able to play that experience has got to be unbelievable. Now, you're going into your senior year, and you got to have pretty good expectations. But what was going to the ACC championship game and winning that, was that an actual goal that you guys had set up before the season started, or was it kind of like something you were like, let's see how many wins we can get and kind of see what happens?
No, that was absolutely a goal from the very beginning. I think, 2 years in a row we lost in the semifinals. And we were ready for that chance. And every single talk we had, every single time that coach was bringing us in, he was pointing to the banners up in the wall, talking about his experiences and those things and his expectations. And that was something that we were working to from the very beginning of the first time we stepped on the court. It was, we won an ACC championship. And unfortunately, we missed out on the regular season one, which was also a goal for us that we talked about all the time. But we definitely redeemed ourselves in the tournament.
Well, talk about missing your goal. I think one of the things I want some girls to learn from this interview is what it's like to not get what you actually want, and then having to readjust and reformulate so you can go get what you want. And so obviously you wanted to win the regular season. Who beat you? What ended up happening that caused that? And then what was the mentality like when you had to go get the tournament championship?
So Louisville ended up winning the regular season, and we had been tied with them for a while. We had a couple of unfortunate losses against people we shouldn't have necessarily lost to, very good teams, but we just weren't playing our best game. And I think being able to move on and pivot, like, it's good to mourn the loss of, a goal. it means that it was important. You should spend the time to really feel it so that you don't ever want to feel that again. And, we can say a lot of things. We can say, well, preparation, all these things, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to move on and continue on the next thing, or else you're going to get stuck. And I think that was a really good action on the part of our coaches of refocusing us, because we were very disappointed. That was something that we wanted to win the regular season and the ACC championship. We wanted to win everything outright. And so people couldn't argue like, well, you won the ACC tournament, but you didn't play so-and-so and all this stuff. But really being able to focus back up on the next goal, the next thing that you need to do to accomplish to get to the point that you want to be at, and moving on is super important, because if you dwell, you're never going to achieve everything you want. And a single setback doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world. And
so you go to the tournament. What's the path? Talk about the path and give me the rundown of the last couple of games that got you to what your goal was.
It just seems like a whirlwind. Like, it almost seems like it didn't happen. I remember my most vivid memories aren't even really on the court. It's like sitting, like getting ready before the court. We had some very good showings against Virginia Tech, and we ended up against Florida State in the final. And Florida State is a very good team, very talented, lots of scorers. We had beat them earlier on, but they were ready. We have friends on the team. We know that everybody is gunning for this, and we're all super excited. It's this like momentous moment. And honestly, like, I barely remember the game. Like, we're in it, and it's so fast paced, and everything's happening so quickly. And then next thing you know, the game is being called and you're under the bottom of a dog pile. So I just think that that's kind of one of those things that all of your preparation came to a point, and either you were going to come out on, or you're going to come out on bottom. And that's the fact that I don't really remember the game is a really good representation of that, is because what happened once the game started is out of our control. So you have to just prepare for that moment as much as you can. And I think that's what our team did really well throughout the season.
Absolutely. And then, we've had Kim Smith from BC win a bunch of awards at high levels, but it's been, she's been on the national team for a really long time. It's been a long time since we've had another one from BC do something like that. So you're standing there, your team's celebrating, everybody's smiling, and then they tell you that you're the MVP of the tournament. What's that? That's got to be, that's got to be overwhelming. What's that like, and what was going through your head when that happened?
Well, I had a really good tournament, and I knew I was kind of part of it. But if you look at the video before, I'm looking at Elisa. I think Elisa's going to get it, because she had just had an amazing season. And I hadn't scored a whole much more than her. And then they call my name, and everybody whips and turns at me, and my head just drops. And, like, I'm starting to cry, because in my head, like, that's always a goal. Everybody wants to be the most valuable player, but in that moment, it was just overwhelming. And, all of that work that I had put up in the gym up to that point really showed itself in that tournament. And, I started the season off, before season even started, I was on the list for a bunch of awards. I was preseason all ACC, all of these things. And I started off my season, and it was like a real big crash, like quick. Like, I went 3 games without hitting a 3. Everybody was expecting so much from me. I was expected to do the NC State's all-time 3-point record. I was supposed to be a finalist on the Shooting Guard of the Year award, all of these things, and be a first team all ACC. And it was really difficult, like that beginning of the season when I just wasn't playing well. I was preparing, I was practicing, I was doing all those things. And I think it was just like all of the rigidity was holding me back. And so from going from that really high to really low, and then like finishing it off with that MVP was really surreal, and was kind of like a really good reward for, like, sticking to it and not giving up on myself.
Yeah, no, it's a huge deal. So you finish, you win the MVP, your team's ready to go, you're ready to go to the NCAA tournament. Internally, what are your goals for the NCAA tournament? Did you guys talk about actually trying to win the championship, or were you like, let's make it to the Final Four? Like, what were the internal goals that you guys had set?
Same as the ACC tournament. Like, we wanted to get to a Final Four. I mean, we like to say we have 4 seasons, preseason, regular season, ACC tournament, and then NCAA tournament. So we like to focus at one season at a time. And so we did talk about, we want to win a championship. We want to get to a Final Four. This is our year. We got to get over that Sweet 16 hump we've hit 2 years in a row. That was something we were really ready to do. And I think after winning the ACC championship, it felt really real for the first time. Like, we really have a shot. We're going to be a 1 or 2 seed. We really have a shot of, making it all the way to the championship. This is our chance. This is our year. And then to have it kind of snuffed out right as we go into our first practice to prepare for it was really heartbreaking.
Yeah, for sure. So you have to regroup. Obviously, the season's ended, and then you've got to decide where you're hoping to get drafted in the WNBA. That doesn't happen. You've got to now find somewhere to play in Europe. What's your thought process of where you want to go? What are you looking for? What are the things that are kind of ruminating for you?
Well, after the WNBA draft happened and my name wasn't called, we were very disappointed. I mean, same thing, mourning the loss of that goal, and then moving on. It was like, pivot, we need to find a way to get back to this point for next year. We can, again, the same thing as with the regular season, we can sit and go, well, if there was an ACC, if there was an NCAA championship, and you had gone all the way, would you have been drafted? If, all those things. And it's so easy to get caught up in all of that. It's so easy to, say, well, the world just hates me, and it was like, there was no way it was going to happen anyways. But for me, I took a walk after the draft ended by myself, and in due fashion, it started to rain, like a movie. And, I had my little moment, and then, I flipped a switch and I was like, okay, what's next? We need to move on. And what was really next is finding a position for me to play and a team in Europe for me to play for that was going to enable me to get back to the WNBA. I mean, that is the ultimate goal. Obviously, overseas, you can make your money, you can do all those things, but as somebody who wants to be the best player I can possibly be, that is one of the pinnacles outside of the Olympics. So, working with my agent, talking about it, COVID-19 has really messed a bunch of stuff up. There's not as many jobs. Some leagues are not playing. Lots of teams have disbanded. So I had an offer to play for Elfic Freiburg in Switzerland. And this is the top team in Switzerland. They play in Eurocup. They're the only Swiss team, I believe, that is playing in Eurocup. Great place, really reliable and paying, and a great opportunity for me to play a lot of minutes and develop my game and showcase myself in a new view for the WNBA. And I was talking with my agent, and we just decided, this is where we should go. This is what needs to be the next step. So in mid-August, I get to head to Switzerland and start my next journey.
You know what? I think it's going to be a blessing in disguise. A lot of I actually follow WNBA because we actually are pretty closely affiliated with a bunch of teams in the ticketing space. And a lot of rookies aren't going to get a shot to play on the team. They're not going to make it through training camp. They're not going to make it on the teams. They're going to have a late start at something that you're already getting a head start on. I think you're going to see very few rookies actually have an opportunity to play on rosters this year. And there's going to be a lot of people that will just be like, we had her last year, come with us. And so I think that's what personally is going to happen. And I think having this head start and knowing where you're going to go and having that chip on your shoulder will actually benefit you in the long run, in my personal opinion. But we'll see. I mean, realistically, the path to your goals is, one of the things I've learned from doing these interviews, we're like over 40 now, is it's never like this. It never just goes like this. It's got to go here. It's got to go there. Sometimes it goes there. Sometimes it even goes backwards. And so for you, I think it's going to be exciting to see the path to take. But also, I think the part of the journey, you're going to get an opportunity to go to Europe. You're going to get to see a bunch of new places that you've never seen before. You're going to get to live in a new experiences you've never had before. It's definitely not North Carolina, that's for sure. And you're gonna, you're gonna, kind of see the world a little bit and kind of refresh yourself, and then be ready to come back and achieve your goal. WNBA is very cyclical. I mean, watching Niall firsthand, seeing her journey, she started in a terrible league and she had to work her way up through every league. And I was like, I don't know, I feel like she's better than that. She shouldn't be in that league.
She actually started in Switzerland as well.
Yeah, but she started in the shitty part of the Switzerland. She didn't start in the top level. So she started, on a terrible team in a terrible league and slowly had to build her way up to get to where she was on a WNBA roster. So that'll be pretty cool. So you're going over there, you're going there in August. If you could, one of the things I've been asking people is if you go back and give young Aislinn Konig, you're obviously very young still, but let's say you go back and give an even younger version of yourself some advice. What would be some of the things you would kind of like, hey, young buck, listen to this one. I got something for you.
I think probably to myself, but also everyone, is the distractions aren't worth it. I think it's really easy to get caught up in what you have to sacrifice as opposed to what your goals are. And, thinking like, well, it's not going to hurt me that bad. And, it's not going to hold me back that bad. And, well, maybe I won't do it today because I'd rather do this. And in the moment, it's self-indulgent and it feels pretty good. But when you're sitting, watching a screen, waiting for your name to be called and it doesn't get called, all of those distractions seem a lot more important, that the fact that you allowed them to affect you. So I would say they're not that important. I know right now, like, especially as teenage girls, boyfriends and going out with friends and maybe neglecting your workouts a little bit, especially in a time like this when it's really easy to do it, might seem like it's okay, but everything comes to a head at the end, and you don't want to be in the same situation where I was, where you have to feel that disappoint and regret, because that's the worst possible feeling you could feel at the end of the day, regretting that you didn't take advantage of your opportunities when they were given to you.
Yeah, we're going to cut that little part of this clip. I mean, that's fantastic. I fully agree with you. Couldn't agree more. I think one of the things, I was just listening to an interview with Sean White, the snowboarder, and he was saying, one of the things I've never understood is when people finish second, they go out and party. He's like, how do they know that workout that they missed to go to that party wasn't the one that kept them back from getting first the next time? And he's like, I could never do that. He's like, I used to work out after we won because I wanted to make sure that, it happened again. I like winning. He's like, I want to do it again every time. So great advice there. Now, well, another thing I ask people is what's one piece of adversity you had to overcome to get to where you are today? You've mentioned a few of them, but what would be, if you had to pick one specific one, even some maybe that you didn't say already, that you had to overcome to get to the place that you are today?
I think probably the biggest one that I didn't mention, because it seems like it's kind of self-explanatory, but would be where I came from. I mean, from Canada, it's not, you don't get as many opportunities and you really have to seek them out. Fortunately for me, I was surrounded by an amazing culture in my household, in my friends, and all of that really allowed me to flourish and focus on the things I needed to focus on. But, we get into this situation where you have to not allow anybody to stand in your way. I mean, whether or not it's your parents or it's your friends or it's even yourself, like, choosing to be great is a really difficult choice. I mean, it's hard, and it's a good way to get alienated a little bit, even from the people closest to you. But, seeking out those opportunities and not being afraid to stand out and not being afraid to stand up for what your goals are and what you want. I think that is the biggest part, because in Canada, it's a wonderful place. I love it. I would not choose to be anywhere else, but the culture is a little bit different. In the US, it's very about success and achieving and the American dream and all those things. And it's kind of easier to go after those things without that judgment, or without those some people saying, well, no, like, be a part of the team, be a part of this. And really deciding to be great and not allowing anybody to stand in your way is probably the biggest part of growing up and becoming successful, I think.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things, last thing I'm going to leave you with is, following you on social media, loosely, there's a couple of people that have kind of had a big impact on your life. So obviously Neil Brown, we're going to just quickly touch on three people real quick. Neil Brown, Gabe Gibbs, and then Chris Hansen. I've seen a lot of stuff with you and these guys. So, you know, these are three very strong characters, three very high quality people. I personally enjoy speaking with all three of them. Talk a little bit about each of them and what they kind of meant towards you in your journey.
So Coach Brown and Coach Veal at Brookswood, I mean, allowed me to flourish. I think Coach Brown will even say this himself. A lot of the times he just sat back and watched, and he let me be the player I needed to be. And I think without somebody who really allowed me to take control of my own path, and somebody who not only allowed that, but also opened up the avenues for me to do that by opening the gym, by giving me those opportunities to get extra work in the weight room, all those things. There's no way that I could have achieved that without his support. So before even everything blew up, like, he is a really big part of my foundation of basketball. Gabe Gibbs is like family. I mean, he lived with us for a while. When he moved from Detroit, he met my mom in college when she went back to school, and he was playing basketball there, and he said he really wanted to get out of Detroit, and my family's like, well, come on over. And he's just been a part of my life since then. You know, he is a self-made man for sure. I mean, you see what he's done with G2 and how he's been a part of a lot of pros development and stuff, mainly Meta World Peace over in China and all of that. He's just somebody who kind of switched the way I play basketball a little bit to be more fluid, to be a little bit more shifty, because he does work with those pros. So he kind of trains me like I'm a guy, and that is something that I think every girl needs, somebody to train them like a guy, because we need to move a little bit more quickly, a little bit more fluid, and he's somebody who you know, really helped me with that. And then Chris Hansen, another person who's just like family. I think he left ESPN and started Elite Azern and Prospect Nation, and I was at his very first camp, which had 16 girls. I just worked another camp a couple weeks ago in San Antonio, and there was 130 girls in the gym.
Yeah, there wasn't much social distancing going on there.
Oh, yeah, but it's Texas, so you know, you can't. I don't know what more to expect from Texas, right? But, you know, no fans or anything, just the girls in there. But, you know, he, you know, really helped me in my development as a younger player, but also in the way I was able to be recruited, interact with coaches. And he really is that middleman between them that really is able to, it's like a matchmaker. Like, he is able to find the perfect place for you and put you in contact with them. And, you know, without him, I don't think my recruiting would have been as big as it is. And he really is just like family. I'm working with him on a bunch of other camps, and I think we're trying to work on like a clothing line together. So that really is, all three of those people are just like the biggest part of my basketball experience, and just like family for me.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you coming out today. It's very exciting. I've always, you know, I've had to coach against you a little bit. I've had to watch you play and watch you grow as a young kid to who you are today. It's been very cool. It makes me feel very old, actually. So thanks for that. But
I know, I'm 22 now.
Yeah, I know. I believe it. So watching the process happen has been fun, and seeing you achieve your goals has been fun. I kind of, you know, same with you. I was ready to see in the NCAA tournament. It didn't happen, but you know what? One closed door equals another open door, and I think you're going to have very much success going forward, and I'm excited to see it. So say hi to your parents for me, and we'll see you soon.
I will. Thank you so much for having me.